Hello, and welcome to Hermit's Cupboard. I'm Reverend Lloyd. Today's topic, crafting herbal magic. We're going to cover the topics of seeing herbs as individuals, herb culture and history from a historical perspective, obviously, herbs' magical personalities, and also selecting herbs for magic. What we are approaching this as is building a personal friendship or relationship with herbs. And this can also be done with other natural objects such as crystals, where where they have properties and associations. So anything that has a magical property or association, you can apply the same information to. Now, this is a video that's associated with an article that's on our website at hermitscupboard.com. I encourage you to visit that. It will be in the notes underneath the video, and you can just look it up on our website under articles. It's important for us to see herbs as individuals. Herbs can perceive, they can react, and they can feel based on environmental changes. Have you ever seen trees just before a rainstorm begin to turn their leaves under so that you see the bottoms of the leaves more so than the tops? That is the tree's way of responding to what's getting ready to happen in its environment. Herbs are sentient beings. They are alive. By acknowledging the body, soul, and spirit of a plant, we're able to not see it as a thing, but to view it as a living entity, just like we are. This is really the first step in building a bond and a friendship with our plant friends or plant people. I've also called them herb friends or herb people. And I'll be using all four of those terms throughout this video. Now, to be able to see them as individuals, we need to begin to relate to each different species as individuals. And even within those species, sometimes you might have two that are very similar but are different. For example, mugwort and wormwood. Both of them are under the same genus, but they're two specific species using their specific epithet. So scientifically named, they are unique plants with different personalities, which we'll get into shortly. One of the best ways to begin to build a friendship with herbs, go to your garden center, go to your hardware store. Also, in our article at the very bottom, we've listed two resources where you can get medicinal herbs via the internet, either in seed or plant form. I encourage you to try seeds. The reason being is you get the full experience. You begin to see how long it takes for a single seed to germinate, for those first few leaves to break the surface. And life began for that plant before you saw those leaves. It was already beginning to grow underneath. The other thing that you want to do is get some books on botany. That's the study of plants. You don't have to purchase these books. You can check them out from the library. You can even look for resources online. Become familiar with the structure of a plant. What are roots? What do they do? What are the stems? What are their functions? Why does a herb or a plant have leaves? What do those leaves do? What about flowers? Look up this information on botany and you begin to see the different structures and how they interact for the entire plant person. This will give you a much better understanding of its growth, of its reaction to its environment. You will be able to have a lot of sensory input. You can see it. You can talk to it. There's nothing wrong with talking to your plants. You can feel it. You can smell it. So this allows you to really interact with the herb as an individual. Let's take a look at how we discover herbs' culture and history. Just like individuals, there is a cultural demeanor for any of our herb friends. Where do they originate? Under what conditions do they live? Are they from Europe? Are they from South Africa? Are they indigenous to the United States? Can you find them in the open plains? Or do they prefer woodlands? Maybe they really prefer woodlands next to water. Maybe they prefer not a plain, but a rocky or an arid region. This is the culture. It answers the question of what is the environment that these plants are most familiar with. We would find that information as we look up the horticultural details for different herb peoples. A good resource is an herbal field guide. Now, when I say herbs, I mean herbs as in the wee little plants, the trees, mosses, anything that's in the plant scientific umbrella, the scientific umbrella of plant kingdom. Now, what a field guide will show you or give you will be a picture of what the herb looks like, a description of that herb, including its environment that it likes. Again, going back to, does it like the woodlands? Does it like water? Does it like to be dry? Does it like sand? It will also give you the common name along with the specific epithet. Some of us are familiar with genus species. Those two words together is the specific epithet for an herb. It's its specific name. It will also sometimes give you an idea of what parts are used in medicines or in herbal folklore. So these are very good guides. Again, you don't have to purchase them. You can always check them out from a library and find the information online. Now, when it comes to the history of an herb, let's look at this as a friend. We meet somebody, they pique an interest, a curiosity. We talk to them a little bit more. We like having them around, and we decide that that individual we want to pull into or invite into our inner circle of friends. Most of the time, one of those questions is going to be asking that individual, what's your story? What are the experiences, the environment, the thoughts, your reactions that have made that individual into who they are? Well, We cannot ask that of our plant friends. They don't speak our language, and we don't speak their language. What we can do, though, is we can look at historically where those plants stood within their communities. So one of the first books that I want to suggest, and we do not carry any of the books that I mentioned in this segment, this is Plant Lore, Legends, and Lyrics by Richard Folkard. And it lists alphabetically herbs by their common names and gives a variety of folklore that he has found on the individual species. Sometimes it's species, sometimes it's specifically plants. For example, you're going to find lavender in here. And lavender would speak to English lavender, French lavender, or the latest lavender X intermedia. So lavender would be one of those that falls under an umbrella. And he would address, again, using the same example, wormwood separately from mugwort, which are both in the same genus but have different specific epithets. So this is a good resource to find how these herb people were a part of the cultures historically. Another book that does very much the same thing is by Maud Grieve, A Modern Herbal, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Now, these volumes include more than just a history of how the herbs were used from a cultural perspective. Maud, or Miss Grieve, goes into more detail into the medicinal aspects of herbs. This is dated information. It is not the most recent science, but it is a part of the folk culture of the use of herbs, or the application of herbs. So she's going to give you stories of how the herbs were used. She's going to include the chemical constituents that they were aware of at that time, which affects or gives the herbs their healing properties, how to use these herbs in healing. Very good resource if you can get it. Both of these books are out of print, and you can, this is a reprint, and this is a used book. I do have references in the article for where to find these books. Now, these aren't the only ones, and they don't have to be books that are extremely thick. I was walking through an old bookstore, and I spotted this one. It was The Legend of Flowers. Like, wow, that's kind of interesting. We have legend, we have flowers. That's right up my alley. This book's old enough. It was published in England, and it does not have a copyright. Some of the flowers that are included in it for its stories are sunflower, edelweiss, dahlia, iris, honeysuckle. So it goes into a lot of information on just a few flowers comparatively or relatively speaking. And this is obviously old information. Is it relevant today? Again, we're looking at the historical aspects of an herb so that we can understand how it related to other individuals over the course of time that it's been identified. Yes, very valuable still today. One other book that I purchased, had it shipped from England, relates to my family's cultural background. We're Scot-Irish and German. I very much relate to anything Scottish. I enjoy reading its history. I enjoy reading the culture, the folklore, the mythology. This book is The Scots Herbal, The Plant Lore of Scotland. So this definitely rings with me. There are other books that list herbs based on culture. So you might have Italian herbs, Egyptian herbs, Middle Eastern herbs, herbs of Norway, Sweden, so those northern countries, herbs of the Americas, herbs of South America, Central America, Asia, and there are books specifically on those specific geological locations and cultural locations. Those are extremely handy books if you are looking to connect with a specific culture and how they use the herbs that were around them. So these are the types of resources that we will use when we're looking for the herb's culture and historical stories, so that we can, again, continue to develop that intimate personal friendship with the herbs. An herb's magical personality refers to two things: its associations and its properties. An herb's associations are very similar to the associations that we as people might keep, where we join an organization or a group of individuals who have the same interests, the same motivations as we do. In this case, there are 4 different associations that an herb belongs to. The first being gender. I have some difficulty with that one. We'll come back around to it, okay? The next one is the element that it's associated with. Next, we have the planet that it's associated with, or planets. And then the 4th item is the astrological sign that the herb is associated with. So let's go back. The first one was gender. Now, under Hermetics, everything is assigned a gender. However, culturally, we are a different people today, and we see gender as something beyond the binary. There are no herbs, to my knowledge, that are specifically listed as both or uni. Everything is typically male and female, again going back to the binary. This is something that I am uncomfortable with, and you might be as well. I would encourage you to find your way of working through that. It's a very personal thing, so I can't give you any advice. I can just say, spend time digesting what gender is for yourself and allow that to relate to your plant friends. Again, it's just like your regular friends. It shouldn't make a difference. Next is going to be the element that it's associated with. Now, these are the 4 basic elements of air, fire, water, and earth. Some of these you might agree with, some you might disagree with. We'll get to that in a moment. Next would be the planet that it's associated with. A lot of times these planets have been associated with the herb based on its gender and the element that it's associated with, and then its properties. So you might see, it might be listed as one planet in an association, or maybe even 2 planets that it might have association with, but you might feel it has an association with something different. That's okay, so long as you have really spent time with the herb and have asked yourself, how does this herb fit into the planetary mix? That's fine, okay? please, again, in metaphysics, there are no right or wrong answers. So do what speaks to you, do what the herb, or move in a direction that the herb is speaking to you so that you're coming together in friendship. The last one is astrological signs. There are very few references to the specific astrological signs. Most of the time you're going to have to figure those out, again, based on the other associations. If an herb is associated with water, then other herbs that are associated with water, it's going to get along with. It will work with in the same way, basically. Now, if you were to mix water with fire, there would be a different outcome based on however you view that, and that's okay. But you begin to see now if it's associated with water and, let's say, Venus, okay, that's going to be a different little subgroup of herbs. Let's say it's related to water and the moon. That's going to be another little subset or another little group of herbs. So you're starting to see now that we go from these very large, overreaching associations or categories, and we can begin to filter down and delineate a little bit more. Don't get hung up on it, though. Don't get hung up on it, because next are the magical properties of herbs. And our herb friends are just like us. You can't pigeonhole them into something specific. Some of them might have banishing and love, and which seems awkward together. So that might impact how you view their associations. Okay? It does get sticky. Start simple. This is what this is. This is what this is. If it has two or three things that, if one herb person has two or three of the same combinations, these are probably herbs that you can use together for more strength in numbers for a specific purpose. Okay. Let's move on to herb magical properties. I refer to magical properties as the herb person's skills and abilities in magic. So these are going to be their skills and abilities for outcomes or specific intent. You might have an herb that is better for psychic power, another one that might be better for love, another one for banishing or exorcism, healing, cleansing. These are all different skills that herbs might have. And these skills can be combined with other herbs with the same skills to bring about what it is that you're looking for. Hopefully this all makes sense. It's a little difficult. Now, where do we find this information? There we go. That's important. Books that we have in the cupboards. These two are by Reverend Paul Birrell. I respect Reverend Paul a lot, seeing not only as he's got some incredible works, but he is also the master herbalist that I am studying under. So this book is the Master Book of Herbalism. This is going to give you some of those associations and properties that we just discussed. This book also goes into some details on plant folklore and histories. It also will give you medicinal guides on how to make your own medicines and what different things are, infusions, extractions, oil infusions, etc. His other book, the second book that he wrote, is a compendium of herbal magic. And this is the book that's going to go above and beyond just the medicinal properties. This is where it's going to get into more of the metaphysical properties. You're going to get into incenses. You're going to find more information on deity within this book as well. And the way Reverend Paul writes, he does not give you specific recipes. Just like this video, he shares with you, here's how to become more acquainted with the herbs, and then you choose how you're going to choose your friends, basically, or your enemies in some cases, to be able to avoid the herbs that you might not be able to work with very well because they just don't relate. So these two books are fantastic resources for finding the herbs' magical personalities. Another one that we have here in the cupboards is Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magic Herbs. Cunningham includes more herbs in a single book than either of Reverend Paul's books, but he also does not provide as much information. This truly is an encyclopedia. It's going to provide you in most cases, it will provide you a black and white image of the plant, its common name, its specific epithet. And with this book being as old as it is, even though they have done some updates to it, Llewellyn has, some of the specific epithets have been updated and are not correct. So you might have to do some additional research for that. This book also includes the associations and the properties. It gives some very little background on how the herb is used. Some cases it doesn't have any information. Others, like rosemary, where there's already a lot of information, it includes some, but not as much as you're going to get from those historical books that we referenced earlier. So these are three very good references that we do have here in the cupboards to be able to discover additionally what the magical personalities are of the herbs. Some of these magical personalities you might have extracted for yourself or defined or delineated for yourself while you were experiencing and getting to know the herb through its culture and history. So this information can be above and beyond what you have found in their histories. Selecting herbs for magic. Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of this video. This is the part that you've probably been waiting for. Understand, though, that in selecting our herbs, all of the previous information we've just reviewed, treating and approaching herbs as individuals, building personal relationships, finding out the histories of these herbs and what their magical personalities are, all of that information goes into selecting herbs for magic. How do you select the herbs that you want for magic? First off, you need to know what your specific outcomes for magic are. Now, this sometimes is called intent, but it's much more than that. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but what I would like to ask you to do is to ask yourself the question of, why am I doing this specific work? What does this specific work entail? What are going to be the individual steps? And third, what are the specific outcomes or outcome that I am looking for? You really need to know that information because you're going to need to communicate that to the herbs and other tools that you are going to use to manifest or produce those results. Let me give you an example. You have some friends who are all painters. So they all have the skills and abilities to paint. And you've got some rooms in your house that you need painted. You go out and you purchase some paint because you know you want these rooms painted. You buy paint, you put it in the garage. You invite your friends over and you say, Hi, painter friends. I have 4 rooms in my house that I want you to paint. The paint is out in the garage. Thank you so much for your help. And you leave it at that. Let's take a look at what might possibly happen. So these painter friends here, the paint's in the garage, they go out to the garage and they gather up any and all paint that you might have happened to have out there. Not just the paint that you had just purchased for this project, but they would pick up your spray paints. Maybe you store some of your craft paints out there as well. Maybe you have done some auto body work or, little touch-ups or something like that from a scrape. So they pick up every type of paint that you've got, carry it back into the house, and they pick 4 rooms that they decide that they're going to paint. Now, not only that, these painters all have different painting skills. So one might be a finish painter for residential or commercial properties. Another one is a street artist, and so they're used to, their painting style would be considered graffiti. You have another individual that they do industrial painting with either automobiles or maybe they do some sort of power coating. And then you have another individual that's classically trained as an artist and is used to using acrylics and oils and the pastels and all of these other things. And they all interpret what you want to have accomplished in their own way. You come back, you open your door, and you walk into a Jackson Pollock Easter egg interior. Knowing what you want to achieve as an outcome is very important so that you can know for yourself what you want to do and you can communicate to your herb friends exactly what the outcomes are that you are looking for. Okay? So there's a little more to this. I would encourage you at this point, definitely go over to hermitscupboard.com and read the article, Crafting Herbal Magic. If it's not up, you can always just search it. Under the menu, click Articles. It'll be listed there. I am going to use a little bit of a cheat sheet now because I use an example in the article. That example is, I want to find the roots of my anger and release myself from it in a loving way without guilt. There's an example of a specific intent. Now, I'm going to share with you kind of how I would approach this, and this is just for me. If you ask another earth magician or kitchen witch or herbal magician, anything like that, if you ask 20 of us, you're going to get 20 different answers. There is no right or wrong way. So this is one way, and I encourage you to find the way that works best for you. So I'm going to first look at what the core purpose is. And the core purpose is to identify and release anger. Anger for me is associated with fire and Mars, so I'm going to be looking at herbs that are associated with fire and Mars. These are going to be herbs that are going to be familiar with my anger, okay, and how to connect with it. Next, within that group, I'm going to look for 3 specific properties. I'm going to look for an herb that aids in banishing. I'm going to look for an herb that is related to love, has the abilities or skills to bring love in because I want to banish it in a loving way without guilt, which means I need some healing with this as well. So I'm going to look for banishing herbs, love herbs, and healing herbs that have the associations of fire and Mars. Now, honestly, there are other ways to be able to look at this. And by the way, that list came up, I believe, with 9 different herbs that I then had the opportunity to work with. Okay? And formulate what it is that I wanted to use to accomplish. And again, that's just an example. So for yourself, you'll need to decide based on your outcome, what the outcome that you're wanting to achieve. What are the herbs, what are the personalities, the magical personalities of the herbs that you know of, your herbal friends, those hip herb people, okay? Which ones are you going to invite into your ceremony to join with your magic to produce the results that you want? That's how we select the herbs for magic. In summary, and to wrap this up, crafting herbal magic, we need to approach herbs as individual people, respecting the body, soul, and spirit of each individual plant person that we meet. We need to develop a relationship with them and understand the culture from which they come and historically how they have joined together and partnered with other humans in magical works. We also need to discover their magical personalities, what associations they are with, and what their skills and abilities in magic are. By building this intimacy with herbs, you will better know why and how to select specific herbs for your magical outcomes. Thank you very much for watching today. Hopefully you can take some of this information and develop it for yourself. I invite you to visit us at hermitscupboard.com. Feel free to comment in the sections below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. I think I just covered all the basics. May the blessings of the earth be upon you.